One of those rites of passage for intermediate mandolin players is that they learn a different set of chords. These are often called swing or jazz chords, and they are used in pop music, in jazz music, in swing music, and they're a little bit different kinds of chords than maybe you've run into in folk, country, and bluegrass. One of the cool things about these chords is that they're closed position chords. Most of them are 3-string chords, and I'm going to show you some of those today on Sweet Georgia Brown, which is one of those great songs that everybody plays, and it's just so much fun. It's got a lot of dominant or 7 chords in it, and it's also often called a song with cycles of fifths, and fifths are the dominant chords like G7, C7, D7, and these fit together in a certain way that's very popular in songs that have been composed probably since the late teens and the 1920s. So let's look at some of these chords. We're going to learn a couple of different positions. And you might ask, well, why do we learn more than one? Why do we need more than one position? Well, different positions have different arrangements of the notes of the chords in them, and they can be really useful for fitting 2 kinds of dominant chords together, or 2 kinds of any chord for that matter together. As I mentioned, there's really no such thing as a swing chord or a jazz chord. They're just chords. The first chord we're going to learn is the first chord in Sweet Georgia Brown when you play it in the key of F. Now I know some of you will probably learn this in the key of G, but it's real easy to just move these chords up a whole step or 2 frets up in pitch on your fingerboard and play in either key. And the cool thing about these chords, I think, as I also mentioned, is that you learn one position and you can move it up and down the fingerboard to several different chords. So if we started with this D7, which I'll tell you about in a minute, I'm making it on only 3 strings. And all of the strings are fretted that I'm using, and I'm muting the first string. And to make this chord, it's a D7, you put your 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the 2nd string, you put your 1st finger on the 4th fret of the 3rd string, and you put your 2nd finger over here on the 4th string, 5th fret. Now in case you're wondering, the root is the D on the 2nd string, 5th fret. Now the cool thing about this is I can move this up in pitch, or I can move it down in pitch. And every place that I place it and play it, it's a different chord. So you learn that one shape, and you can move it to probably 9 different shapes total. So you get 9 chords for the investment of learning one position. So again, that's that D7 there. I'm making it on strings 2, 3, and 4. I'm muting string 1. So let's try to make that chord. And in Sweet Georgia Brown, in the key of F, it's the first chord. And you play it for 4 whole measures. It sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you noticed I was making a certain kind of a comp. It wasn't really a bluegrass comp like where you'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This was 1, 2, 3, 4. I think of that as a cha, chuck, cha, chuck, cha, chuck, cha, chuck. And you can modify that a little bit to get all kinds of different kinds of rhythm grooves. One variation I really like to play is like a gypsy swing groove, and it would be more like a, still kind of a modified cha-chuck, but maybe it's more chuck, 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 chuck. And that's the music that was played by Django Reinhardt, Stefan Grappelli, and the Hot Club, the Quintet of the Hot Club of France. I guess that's right, how you say it. Anyway, they did all that gypsy swing music. Great stuff. I'll tell you about a book I have out a little bit later. Okay, so that's our first chord. Now this is really cool. We're going to move 2 of our fingers down in pitch toward the nut and leave that D at the 5th fret of the 2nd string. This is a G7. So we started with D7, we moved our second and first fingers down a half step. That is really cool because we're going to a whole different chord. We're going from D7 to G7, and one note stays the same and two notes move down a half step. So again, here's what this transition would sound like. And G7. So let me tell you what those fingerings are. Your third finger is going to be on the second string, 5th fret. Your first finger moves down to the 3rd fret of the 3rd string, and your second finger moves down to the 4th fret of the 4th string. Now this is another closed position chord. Again, I'm dampening, muting out that first string, so it's a 3-string chord, and it's closed so I can move it. You're going to be able to play another 9 whole chords with that. Very efficient. Good bang for your buck. So now there's going to be 4 measures of that chord, G7, in Sweet Georgia Brown. Let's do that again, and I'll count them out this time. 1, 2, ready, play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. So now we've gone 4 on the D7, 4 on the G7. Now we got to go down to C7. So you see how all these are dominant chords. They're all 7th chords. And I'll explain that unless I forget. But I'll explain why it's called a fifth, the cycle of fifths, in a minute. So now I got to get to C7. Turns out I can move all 3 of these down a half step or 2, down a fret or 2 to make the C7. So again, here's my G7 going to my C7. Now C7 is the same fingering as that D7 we started with. So here's the D7, here's the C7. And we just moved that same position down 2 half steps to C7. Let me show you the transition from G7 again. So here's G7 and here's C7. Same fingerings as the D7, except your 3rd finger is going to be at the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Okay, so let's do 4 measures of the C7. I'll count it again. 1, 2, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Now, next, we're going to go to an F. Now, you probably know an F. We're going to use a slightly different one here. And watch my transition here, and then I'll tell you what I did. I do this with 2 fingers. I kind of rearrange all my fingers, but basically now my first finger is on the 4th string, 2nd fret, and my second finger is covering 2 strings, 2 and 3, right there at the 3rd fret. I'm still muting that first string. It's not part of the chord, so I don't want to hear it. So I've got a 3-string F, and like all these other ones, this F is movable. I can only move it down, that's to an E, back to F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and on up as many as you can reach on your fingerboard. So we went from D7 to G7 to C7, and now we're at F. And we're going to do that for 3 measures this time. So let's try the F. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to use the form that was our G7 here, but we got to do it up here to make an A7. Now, let me tell you what notes we're playing just to review it. My 3rd finger is playing the 7th fret of the 2nd string. My 2nd finger is playing the 6th fret of the 4th string. And my 1st finger is playing the 5th fret of the 3rd string. So that's an A7. That's going to get us back to the D7, and we're going to do that first part again. But let's talk for a minute about why this is called a cycle of fifths. When you see a a dominant 7 chord, which is a G7, C7, B flat 7. You kind of want to think of that as a 5 chord of something. Because of its dominance, it's pulling the progression toward a 1. So if I start on a D7, D7 is the 5 chord of, think about it for a second, G. But when you get to it in this song, it doesn't resolve to a G and rest. It gives you another dominant chord, a G7. Well, when you see that G7, you want to think of that as a 5 of something. G7 is pulling our ear to the C. Then again, when we get to the C, it doesn't resolve. It's another dominant chord. It's a C7. C7, you think of it as a 5 chord, and it's pulling somewhere, and it's pulling to a or an F. And when we get to F, we played an actual F. We didn't play a dominant chord, right? So this is called a cycle of fifths. 1/5 leads to another, to another, to another, and eventually it resolves. And it resolves on the F. With these other chords, they just have a certain edge to them that is begging to be resolved. Again, this is D7. It wants to resolve to a G. Let me show you what that would sound like. D7 goes to G. Now let me do it to G7, and you'll see it's not quite as restful, I guess. It wants to keep going. So that's what a cycle of fifths progression is. That's what it means. Let's look at the second half of Sweet Georgia Brown. We're going to go back to that D7. We could go to another position of D7 if we wanted. But let's stick with this just to learn one basic set of chord changes. So here's D7 for another 4 measures. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to go to G7 for 4. Ready, play. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Then it gets really interesting. Now we go to a D minor. Let me show you a D minor. This is a closed position D minor. My pinky is on string 2, 5th fret. My third finger isn't doing nothing. It's just hanging out. My second finger is on the 3rd string, 3rd fret. And my first finger is on the 4th string, 2nd fret. And I'm doing that same comp where I'm loosening my grip on the chord to stop the sound, so I get da, cha, 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 cha. So this D minor we're only going to do for 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're going to go back to our old A7. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then back to D minor, then back to A7. Now the last part of the tune goes up to an F, and I'm going to do a different F here. By the way, these next few bars, all kinds of people play them all kinds of different ways. Let me show you how I do it. I'm going to do 2 beats on my F, and this new F, you might know it as a C down here. Again, it's a 3-string chord. I'm not playing my 1st string. I'm dampening that just like I did on all these other ones. But my, well, let me start down here. My 3rd finger is on the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th fret. My 1st finger is going to be and that was on the 4th string. My 1st finger is on the 3rd string, 7th fret, and my 2nd finger is on the 2nd string, 8th fret. So I think I'm only going to do that for 2 beats, and then I'm going to do an E7, E flat 7, D7, and then it's all our same D7 type form that we started out with, but played there, and there it's an E7. So we start with that F, 2, E7, E flat 7, D7, and then G7, C7, F, 2, 3, 4. That's pretty cool. That's a lot of chords, but you've seen them before, so it's not quite so hard. So 2 beats on the F, then E7, E flat 7, D7, and then G7, C7, F, 2, 3. Okay, let's play through those changes. One time through on Sweet Georgia Brown. I'll call out the chords and you'll see them on screen. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, ready, play. D7. G7. C7 now. Back home to F. Now one measure of A7 coming up. Here. D7. G7. D minor. A7. D minor. A7. F, E7, E flat 7, D7, G7, C, and back home to F. So there you have it. Those are the chords to Sweet Georgia Brown. And maybe sometime in the future we'll work on the melody. But these chords are everywhere in this style of, we call it old-time pop music, but I guess it's really mostly known as swing and jazz kinds of stuff. Now, I've put out a few books on this subject. You can check them out on my website, www.musicsnow.com, and I'll put that up there, probably right under my chin. And my most recent book, which I'll put a picture up of, I have 2 volumes of it. It's called Gypsy Swing and Hot Club Rhythm Complete. This is a brand new edition as of January of 2021. It's got 29 great songs in the style of hot club swing of Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli. And what it teaches, it has a play-along band, by the way, which is really fun. But it teaches 29 songs in the style of the hot club of France. And we have a band that you can play along with. That's one of those like that. We have 2 speeds of it so that you can probably play the slower version when you get going, and then you can play along with the band, and we will play all night long. So check that out. There's a version for mandolin. There's also a version for guitar. And again, it's called Gypsy Swing and Hot Club Rhythm Complete. So long.